hate to be out at sea in this weather, wouldn't you? People were, though, once upon a time. Fishermen, trawlers, sailors, navy men, Napoleonic Wars. All the films, all the books, there's always someone who dies by falling overboard.
People die by falling overboard.
Pirates, of course. Radio DJs. Radio DJs? Quite a while ago now, I read a book by a guy called Steve Conway, Shipwrecked, about a pirate radio station, Radio Caroline, which broadcast out at sea from the 1960s up to 1990, 1991, when it ran aground off the Goodwin Sands. And then it went all legal. In that book, he describes being out at sea, being out on the ship, which in the 1980s was the Ross Revenge, in, well, basically this kind of, in fact, worse than this nasty, horrible, what's the name of this storm? They name storms these days, don't they? What's this one called? Nope, apparently this one isn't strong enough to be given a name. Right, I got distracted. Where was I? 1980s, Steve Conway, shipwrecked out at sea, fixing the Ross Revenge broadcasting equipment in weather that was worse than this. It was a different time, the 1960s, when pirate radio first launched, I suppose you could say, the golden age of piracy, the golden age of pirate radio. 1964, the BBC has a monopoly on radio broadcasting in the United Kingdom. They're the only ones who are allowed to broadcast radio signals for entertainment purposes, for radio. Well, of course you'd be broadcasting radio signals for Radio James, you're a fucking moron. There's also a problem with BBC music policy in that they have what is called needle time, which is the amount of hours they're allowed to play recorded music. And it isn't that much. So the BBC's popular music output in the early 60s is, shall we say, limited. And don't forget, this is 1964, so we're talking about the age of, well, rock and roll is pretty much well established. Elvis has not quite left the building, but he's past his peak. The Rolling Stones might just be coming into their own. It's past its toddler years. It's pretty much established as the most popular form of music in the country. Rock and roll, or its successors, anyway. And the BBC ain't with the times. They're not hip, daddy-o. This is where Irish businessman Ronan O'Rahilly comes in. Later manager of George Lazenby, who played James Bond in On Her Majesty's Secret Service. That's a different story entirely. But 1964, he sets up Radio Caroline, the first pirate radio station, the first radio station based off an old ship anchored in international waters outside UK jurisdiction, broadcasting to the UK. It's followed by Radio London, Radio Scotland, Radio 207, all these different ships, what became known as radio ships, broadcasting popular music from out at sea to the UK. Because the BBC couldn't, because they were trying, I think, but it wasn't possible for the BBC at the time to broadcast popular music. So there was a gap in the market, and the only way to fill that gap was through pirate radio. And it's no surprise that a lot of the DJs who were based off of these ships in the 60s later went on to become some of the BBC's most popular DJs. And Noel Edmonds, but let's not talk about Noel Edmonds, shall we? So what happened? Why did the golden age of pirate radio end? Well, the Marine Broadcasting Offences Act 1967 happened because the government, under Harold Wilson, didn't like these guys. It's illegal. We can't have piracy. We can't have people playing music from offshore. So, instead of doing the sensible thing, which was to break the BBC monopoly, to introduce commercial radio, to bring them in, they made it illegal for anyone to associate with the radio stations, anyone British to associate with anyone broadcasting from offshore. Killed them. It was successful. Radio London, Radio Scotland, they all died, ended, finished because of this act. It ended what was a unique period in broadcasting history. Except for one. Radio Caroline, which said, "Fuck you, mate, we'll carry on. We'll carry on, and though you're dead and gone, believe me, we'll carry on." And they did. Until they ran aground in 1991 and became legal. But what about you, James? Would you do it? I mean, go out there to sea in a storm like this. Would you do pirate radio if they offered you the chance? If you were, back then, would you do it? Fuck no! I want to kill enough people on land. Can you imagine what it would be like if I was at sea with a bunch of sweaty DJs with bad music taste? With Noel fucking Edmonds. I'd throw him overboard. Somebody would end up going overboard, and it would probably be Noel Edmonds.
People gotta